Alrighty. What is going on, everyone? Happy New Year. It is January 1st, 2025. December is over, and more importantly, 2024 is over. Year's flown by. I almost really, I can't believe it's 2025. It's here. It's come and passed. It came and went 2024. And so, as always, what I usually do, and I got this probably the third or fourth year in a row now, doing this. This video is probably going to be a little bit longer. We're going to go over, obviously, the December recap as usual, but we'll add an extra, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 minutes, however much longer it is to just dissect the year as a whole, and then what we're looking forward to with 2025. But anyways, without further ado, let's jump right in. $180,000 for December. Honestly, did not expect this month to turn out this way. After really this week of Christmas, the way it was looking wasn't looking all that awesome. I mean, it was looking good. I was profitable, obviously, but after, these 4 weeks, it was looking like one of the lower profitable months of the year for me. And it was a little bit frustrating only because there was a ton of opportunity. Like, I took a lot of trades in December. I think I took like 70 something, and I usually only take between like 50 and 60. So there was an extra 10 to 15 trades I took that I probably wouldn't normally have taken had the market not been as busy. And naturally, the market being busier and there's more opportunities, I would have thought it would have led to more P&L, and that just wasn't the case. There was almost too much going on, and that extra amount of that was going on just made things much more choppy. Some of them were more choppy, which we'll talk about, and some of the trades we're going to go over. But really, it all came down to 2 tickers that really are really I could have just taken these 3 to 4 trades on these 2 tickers, and I would have came up to pretty much the same result. And so obviously it's in hindsight, I don't know that's actually going to happen. I didn't know that was going to be the case. But when you look at all the other trades, all of the other wins that I thought were good in real time, but then on top of all the losses I took in real time, they kind of cancel each other out. And there was really only 2 main tickers that we will go over that really were just big wins. And no, I didn't have to take any losers on them. And that resulted, pretty much in the entire month in and of itself. So without further ado, let's just go week by week here. Week number 1, the first trade of the month that really started me off on a good foot was OPTT. Now, it actually did just run on Friday. I did make a little bit of money on the 31st, but that's not really all that big of a deal to the month. What started me off well on the first Monday of the month was this overnight hold. Now, I didn't actually have to hold it overnight, and it was a little bit sketchy because they actually released earnings, and so normally I'm not one to hold through earnings, but I was pretty confident the earnings were going to be incredibly bad, and along with an offering coming, and that's exactly what happened. So I actually had that plan going into it. If we go into December, and let's actually just for December 2nd, let's do 1 month. Yeah, they have it just barely because we're 30 days out. Let's see here. I originally took a loss on it in the morning. If we look at the actual trade on this one, OPTT, yeah, here we go. So originally, and again, if you look at the daily chart from earlier, it was already extended, and we were already gapping up, and I thought to myself, there's a world this pulls back and then chops around, maybe bounces a little bit, and then does, maybe has some kind of strength in earnings, and then ideally craps itself. That just wasn't the case, right? I got short, and it didn't die nearly as much as I thought. I thought it could pull at least to 55, maybe 50 down in this range. It only pulled and bottomed at 60. And I remember in this moment before this spike started, I thought to myself, this is holding pretty well. I don't like the look of this. Now, I'm not necessarily one to trade off that instinct, because I can't stand covering only for it to, like, say, stuff and not actually make this spike and then actually do fade to the price targets that I had originally had. So, of course, I just said, let's stick to my risk level. Let's kind of ignore that feeling that I have. And, of course, a couple minutes later, it just rips, right? It just squeezes out. I take a loss, and then it starts trading and doing its thing. Now, because it squeezed out, it did top out at pre-market, right? If we look at that even on a bigger time frame, it was a pretty solid double top. And again, the thesis for me hadn't changed at all. And so I thought to myself, if this can kind of stay under these lows, or these highs, I should say, under the 80 highs, the thesis is still here. It sucks that I took a loss, but it doesn't really change much as long as the price action continues to do what I thought I was going to do. And so you see me reshorting here, risking that high. And then we get into after hours, and I'm watching like a hawk because I know how earnings go, and it could be, a big spike, right? It's one of those things where I'd say don't try this at home, because I'm typically not one to want to hold the earnings. I never really want to hold the earnings unless I am extremely convicted in one way or the other, which is very rare. And sometimes that has come to bit me in the ass before, because I was just dead wrong on previous times of doing this. But again, that's like I've done this like 3 times. So, but this time I was right. This time they announced earnings along with an offering. I immediately added, and then it just got crushed. I actually got lucky with an extra fade into the later end, or the second half of after hours, sub 40, which was the original goal. It's kind of funny it bottomed at 40 because I was so close to covering and I didn't get any. But it did fade, and I covered it all sub 40 there without having to hold it overnight. So that was really, really cool. Ended up making 18K even after this loss. So that was a pretty solid win to start the week. Now, however, that's really all it was, because the rest of the week I just was battling to stay small green and or small red. And the theme of that was because of gap and craps. So for all my gap and crap short sellers out there, I think you would agree with me in the pain that we suffered in December. Probably the worst month for gap and craps that I've experienced, and I've only taken them really seriously this year alone. But my gosh, more stop outs than any other month combined. It feels like I don't know if it was this week or one of these other weeks in the month, but it was like every day I was stopping out at least once, if not twice, on some gap and craps. And that's just not usually the case. Usually it's a pretty high win rate setup. And so to have a high win rate setup lose frequently, it was not fun. And so like PSQH was one, CYCN was one, RKDA was one, which was frustrating because it actually ended up working. I just ended up getting stopped out, I think, at the high, which was super frustrating. If you look at the chart, I'm almost positive I stopped out like almost into 10, only to see it fail. And that was super, super annoying. If you look at the trades, let's get rid of OPTT. PSQH, right? Got short, looked really good out of nowhere, squeeze. And actually, I think this was when I think they PR'd. This is when I think Donald Trump Jr. Confirmed that they were part of the board. And I saw the PR, and I was kind of dumb to not cover it sooner, but I just wanted to trust the plan regardless of the news, and that was kind of silly because it immediately stopped me out. But thankfully I stopped out because it went much higher after that. So that was lost there. CYCN, this one was frustrating because I literally got stopped out over, I was so close stopping out here, didn't. I was like, okay, we dodged the bullet, only to then get me, and then it died. That was insanely frustrating. And then same thing, RKDA. So actually, RKDA didn't stop out over 10, but stopped out over 9, dollar higher, and then still offered a really good fade. Actually, technically 50% off the highs from 10 to 5. So good fades if you time them correctly, but the timing was incredibly difficult for me in this month and didn't work out well. And then even AMPG here. AMPG was on the second week, but same thing here. Got short, kind of chased weakness like I normally do, but that came to bite me in the ass as it just got stronger, stopping me out, and then kind of chopped, but really never even got lower than where I shorted in the first place, so it was pretty bad to begin with, and then off to the races late day for even a bigger squeeze. So that was kind of the trend. And again, that's just this week going into this week, the second week. But like I could probably list off 3 or 4 more gap and craps in the second half that just loss after loss after loss. And so I'm not going to bore you with that, but that's kind of the trend for gap and craps, which sucks. I just wanted to, I guess make that point early on because it was very early on for me. I was like, wow, these are not fun. These are not fun this month. What also wasn't fun was DXYZ. If we go into a daily chart, talked about it in November that this was a really great trade for me here. And then I did chop myself off a bit in here, but that wasn't the end of it. I ended up chopping myself up even more. Thankfully, not more in terms of P&L, but definitely more in terms of attempts. I probably took another 3 or 4 attempts in this period. I think even actually on this fade a little bit too, only to make a small gain out of it when it bounced back. But I gave up. I pretty much stopped after like the 20th of December. So this last week I haven't touched it at all, thankfully, because I finally had to kind of put myself in timeout and be like, you're done. This is just, whether it's a small win, small gain, it clearly isn't getting me anywhere. Yes, the fundamental value and the thesis is still there, but like, who cares? Like, this is just going to keep doing what it's doing until something drastically shifts. And until then, there's just no reason to waste my time and energy on it. So, but what specifically happened, the 2 specific trades that I remember really annoying me and being the bulk of the losses, especially on week 2 here, I think specifically these 2 days. First was a long. So I actually bought the breakout over 73 here, this high. Well, first off, I should mention on the 9th here, looks like an awesome red day, and that it was. But I filled, I don't know, a fourth, not even, maybe a tenth to a fourth of the size I actually wanted. So when it died, it was awesome. It offered incredible range from 72 down to 52, a whole $20 a share. But I maybe made a few grand, not even. In fact, if anything, I didn't even cover much because I was like, screw this, I have no size. Let's wait for a bounce, get the size I want, and then hold overnight. And that's technically what I did. I shorted into like the 60, 61, 62 range, only to see it then just awkwardly grind back up all day. Covered it for about break even, maybe a small gain at best. Super annoying because had I just filled what I wanted, I wouldn't have been so greedy with such less size, which is silly. You should trade it the same regardless of what size you have, but unfortunately that's just the bias I had, which is like I have no size, who cares? When if I had size, let's say I had 10 or 5x the size, 10 to 5x the size of what I wanted, instead of what I filled, it's like of course I'd be covering. I'd have been covering almost everything in the low 50s here. This is such the easiest $20 a share you could ever see. But again, my long-term thesis thinking, okay, it'll still fade, was still part of me, even though I didn't have the size I wanted. So I kind of incorporated both, and that bit me in the butt and resulted in having no gain at all. Only for it to then break out. So we'll call it 2 or 3 days later, it's breaking out over this 73 high, right? And so I'm buying this in this range. It's looking decent, right? It's actually looking okay to close, above the breakout level, and then hopefully run again the next day. And out of nowhere, it just pulls the rug on itself. And so I end up selling at I think 65, 66, somewhere in here, near the lows. Took like a 6 or 7K loser after being up a few grand. Pretty annoying if we look at the chart. Yeah, I mean, this is I don't know where the selling came from. It just came out of nowhere. And so I just took a loss on a breakout. And to some degree, I get what I deserve. It's like that's what you kind of get for buying a breakout so early on a stock that's already so insanely extended. But then again, I thought it was extended at 50 when I bought the breakout, and that worked pretty well too, right? And so I did actually make money on that breakout as well. But the breakout really only made back some losses that I was already chopped myself up, in late November anyway. So all in all, it ended up being break even to losing. And then once it failed, once again, right, it had that huge stuff that I lost on the breakout. I thought, okay, this is backside. That was a huge fake out breakout. Let's get short the next day. And so, of course, I'm naturally getting short. I think I either take a small loss in the morning and avoid this pull. But once it rolls over here, I start to take some overly big size that I just shouldn't have, thinking it was going to break down really well here. Only to not, and then late day I just cut it for like a 13K loser, way bigger than I should have been. Should have only been like this 6, 7, 8K range, so well over double just because I was aggressive without really realizing what I was actually risking. And let's just show the trades there on this one. Yeah, really silly. This beginning trade in the morning, again, super small, very happy with this one. These 2 extra ads here were just super unnecessary, super greedy into weakness, only to see it just rip back, and then I'm covering for, again, like double the loss that I should have taken. So that was super annoying, but is what's the biggest culprit to why this week was red and ending up negative 26K. So now, week number 3 is where things start to look alive. However, I wouldn't be fooled, or I'm warning you not to be fooled by how this looks. This could have gone a complete 180, and it could have been a terrible, terrible week. And let me share why, because it was close, and I took the chance, and it worked. But first off, let's start about like how this even started, right? Like, what were the opportunities here? And if you were following along or have been trading this month, the quantum sector absolutely went berserk pretty much the entire month, but specifically, the third week of the month went insane. That's when QUBT went from practically 8 to 28. RTTI went from, 6 to 12. QBTS went from this 4 all the way to 10. Really the biggest move of the run, I would argue, happened for pretty much the sector. And even QUB or BTQQF here was an OTC breakout in the quantum sector that actually was the only one I made money on the long side. I bought this breakout over 250. Well, actually, sorry, forgive me. On BTQQF, QBTS, and RGTI, I actually bought them into, I believe, was it a Friday over the weekend? what day was it here? It was on the 13th, correct? Yeah. So this Friday, on the 13th, I was buying these 3 stocks, thinking with a very high chance of certainty that over the weekend, quantum was going to get hot. News was going to continue to spread with the whole Google, whatever Willow chip they have, I think was the name, right? And that these were going to break out and go higher, right? The kind of secular momentum brewing, before our eyes. And so I did buy QT or BTQQF. Forgive me, guys. I bought it at $2. And it worked out well because it held red green. So if we go into the actual intraday, it never went red, and that's what kept me to stay in the trade. And then I ended up selling over like 250. Where is it? So bought it here, and then I ended up selling into like the 260s, 270s up here, only for it to watch it go up, 3+, almost 4 a couple days later. But it got super, super sharp the next day, so I'm just happy I sold it where I did. Locked in 8K there. We look at the actual trades there, right? Longed into the close, sold a little bit out the open on the gap up just in case I was going to go red. I was going to stop out there, but then sold the rest, on this kind of drawback, when this trend stopped, right? It's kind of this not perfect, but pretty steady uptrend. Once that ended, I sold about maybe most of my size here, and then sold the last piece on a bounce into the 260s there, locking in at 8K. Now, that was the best long because everything else I royally screwed up. So same idea, RGTI and QBTS, longed them on Friday for a breakout come Monday. Now, these ones, I was not risking red-green. I knew being NASDAQ, I knew being the sector that I'd already been watching for the last week or two, they're choppy. They're not smooth by any means necessary or whatsoever. I knew going in, I honestly knew going over the weekend, I didn't even have to necessarily take them overnight. I took them overnight just in case they were going to gap up. But I knew I didn't have to necessarily because I just knew they didn't have to necessarily gap up to work, right? I knew there was a world they could be super choppy and then they would work. The problem is, come Monday morning, I just totally blanked. Like I just had a huge brain fart and didn't follow my rule and my trade plan at all, or my rules. And just sold for break even to small losses. QBTS, I longed in the close at like $5, so pretty high off the bounce. But again, I had conviction and a game plan, risking well below these like 460 levels right here. This kind of really solid support level that was formed late day. Out the open the next day, pulls back, and I actually sold this one immediately because this delayed open freaked me out. I'm sure many of you have seen this before, where like, and I don't know why it happens. But everything else was coming in with such a large amount of volume, and QBTS wasn't having any volume at all. Like, it almost wasn't even trading. I remember trying to sell, my orders not going through, and then that caused me to be even more panic and freaking out of like, oh my gosh, what happens if it goes to the 460 stop price that I have, and I can't sell because nothing's filling? So I just started spamming orders, selling as fast as I could, only for it to finally, I guess, officially open, 4 minutes later, and then I immediately fill at $5 for a break-even trade. So one, that caused a little bit of franticness for no reason, because I just should have looked back and looked at the volume and like, wait, it's not actually opening yet. It hasn't started trading yet. RGTI, this one also was a brain fart, which is, again, I'm risking well below this 650 last low. I'm long from practically like 7. And it looks okay, but then it breaks 7 and it's like bottoming at 640 or 675-ish. And I just sell. I can't explain to you guys why. I didn't really... I wasn't scared of the loser. It would have been a very average loss if I stopped out. It's just, I don't know if I had like the mental capacity. I just stopped out. I just sold, only to see it work. And then I reflect back. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I never broke a risk. I just went blank. Right. And so that's when that happened. That's when I immediately realized QBTS wasn't working, and so I just again, like I said, panicked out of that one too. So if you look at the actual trades here, like this is me longing, into Friday or into the close, right, on RGTI, only to then just randomly selling, right, and even pre-market. I couldn't explain to you. I don't know why, guys. I'm selling here. I don't know why. And then it just drops, and I sell the rest. Sell that there, and then same thing. QBTS longing into $5 into the close. And then same thing Monday morning. It just, again, finally, once the volume came in, I filled actually the full size I wanted. And it was weird, right? Like I said, I was putting in orders and trying to frantically sell, and it only increased my level of panic for some reason, because I would put my order in, it would fill like 5 shares. Then the order would cancel. I was like, okay, weird. Put it again, fill like 2 shares, the order would cancel. And I was like, what on earth is going on? So then I just kind of started, going downhill from there. Ultimately, again, selling both for break even to a slightly small loss on RGTI. And then you look at it an hour later and they're both at price targets that I had in mind. And again, I had 10K shares of both of these. I mean, these both breakouts could have been 5-figure winners easily. And so that didn't really put Monday to a great start. Now, again, because I think I actually finally made money on some gap craps here along with then BTQQF. So I did have a good day to start the week. But my gosh, in comparison, to what it could have, should have, would have been, I don't need IB open, get that out of here. To what it could have, should have, would have been had I had just say 2 10K profits at the minimum. It would have been a much different start to the week. So very, very frustrating. But then let's move on now to the actual, me trying to actually short the tops of these things. Gosh, they were such a pain in my asses, guys. So again, let's just go back to the daily chart, specifically of QUBT, because this one's the best looking, and this one was the one I wanted to risk the most on. However, for some reason, as great as it looks in hindsight here, I thought it looked pretty darn good already on 2 days, going from 7 or 8 to 18. So even this 2-day run, I was already looking at it pretty bearishly. And so out the open in the morning, and actually we did a live trading session on YouTube on this particular morning, I got stopped out on all 3 of these really quickly. And I mean, I lost about 10K across the board on all 3 of them, pretty much immediately. And so that's okay. I totally expected that to happen. There's nothing out of the world or ordinary there. What happened was then I got reshort them. So if we go back into, so here, right, gonna get chopped up, stop out, QBT, right? This pulls me in. I start adding like literally at the lows, like sub 18 here, only get stopped out. And then same thing QBTS. If we go into the top there, where is it? Right here. I avoided a little bit of adding to QBTS here, but this one went a little bit further against me, and so that also created a loss that I just was willing to take, but didn't expect it to be that big right off the bat. So again, to start off the morning, bam, like down 30K. I'm like, okay, not fun. However, all of them had this very, very impressive, I would say, morning spike and or semi blow-off move. And I've seen enough sector momentums to see when that happens of like, okay, me and everyone else who was short just kind of got blown out. That's a pretty solid top signal. Like, let me get reshort. And so if we look at the actual trades here, let me get rid of TNXP. We'll go over that one in a second. Right, so QUBT. Gets stopped out, blows off. I'm like, okay, that's a pretty good blow-off spot. Let's get reshort. So you see me adding all on this backside, all these bounces. Same thing with all the others. Let's just get all these out here. That's actually the aftermath of that one. Same thing here, right? Get short in the lows, get stopped out near the highs, blows off, reshort. Reshorting at the lows here of this bounce, or this pull, I should say, don't love that. That's not great in hindsight. And then same thing with RGTI, stopped out, reshort. Now, you'll notice though, RGTI and QBTS, that thinking was correct. Those tops were the tops of the day. Like that was the top and the high of the run. QUBT, on the other hand, was not, clearly. And that's where I started getting chopped up to the point of me pretty much facing a max stop loss. And we'll go over that in a second. But stop out here, only to reshort, stop out again, only to reshort, stop out again. I'm going back and forth. So now I'm down. And then the good part is with only QUBT was doing this, RGTI and QBTS, although yes, I was chopped myself up. Thankfully, these were much, much smaller paper cuts. They were not nearly as big. And so I was really only doing it because I thought to myself, if QUBT is the leader going up, like why am I staying in the sympathies? Kind of silly to think because again, had I just stuck to high day risk and ignoring that they might be following each other, it kept me in the trade. So this one's a little bit, RGTI gave me, I think, a little bit bigger losses just because I had to reshort lower. But ultimately, finally, I took it like a 5-minute breather. I said, Kyle, like you're chopping yourself up. You're now down probably, at this point, I remember looking at my screen, I was down like 50K plus between all the names. I was like, just take a chill pill, right? Just sit and relax for a second. Then the Federal Reserve had their FOMC meeting. I don't care what he said. I know what he said, but like what he said was we're going to lower interest rates less in 2025, which is not what the market wanted to hear. And the overall market is starting getting crushed. QQQ, SPY, everything started selling off. Now, I watch the FOMC for fun or for just to be in the know. I don't really watch it to start trading off it by any means. But when all of these quantum stocks start selling off with the market, I'm like, I can't help but notice, like, I don't want to trade off it, but I have to notice, like, hey, something's happening here. Like, there's a shift. And so that's when I finally get reshort for good on RGTI. That's when I finally get reshort for good on QBTS, although there's a terrible entry. But again, I'm like, nope, we're getting short and we're sticking to my risk levels no matter what. No more choppiness. That finally dies. Just get rid of these to save some space. QUBT, I do the same thing as well right here. Okay. Now, I downsize because I'm like, okay, this is bouncing back. I don't like that. That was a little extra ad that I wanted to see if this could really get, obliterated because it was still the strongest out of the bunch, right? It's the one that was making highs, whereas the other two were not. And then you'll notice this grind back from hell, right? Everything was selling off lower. Again, QBTS was lower. RGTI was like practically red on the day. But here's QUBT just like defying gravity against the entire market. And it was like the only stock I could physically find that was grinding up like this. Everything else was selling off. Everything. And that, along with actually watching the action in real time, I'll never be able to prove it, but I was watching it and I was like, someone is getting squeezed so hard and they're trying to get out in pieces and portions to not like just obliterate the stock higher. Like it's like the way it was moving was just like they were trying to slowly, like it's like some big fund got margin called, if I had to just completely guess the way it was moving. And it obviously it was on its way up to new highs. And my risk level was here. I thought to myself, the massive divergence between, this stock and the rest of the market and this stock and the rest of the sector, I thought to myself, I'm going to call bullshit on this ticker. Like I'm not going to stop out. I told myself that. Now, I would have stopped out had it gone higher, but I potentially changed the plan. And this is very, very risky. Another scenario of like, don't try this at home. I'm doing this with nearly 9 years experience. I'm willing to risk more, right? Again, had this gone over like 29.30, yeah, my max stop was in place. It would have stopped me out fair and square. I would take the loss, eat it. But I had enough wiggle room to give it a little space. And not only that, but again, you notice I stopped out over the highs here, only for it to go 10, 20 cents higher, pull back. Stopped that again, only for it to go 10, 20 cents higher for a pullback. Even here, did go about $1 or $2 higher, but then that still was a fake out and a pullback. So for me, having it see 3 times in a row of a new high day only failing, along with the massive divergence in the market and in the sector, I put all those pieces together, and then along with the action of me thinking like someone is just getting margin called, squeezing themselves out, like this action isn't actually the underlying trend in my opinion. I called BS. I said, great. Like you guys are gonna stop me out over like 28, 29, or I'm holding. Like I'm not gonna stop out over the high day. It doesn't make any sense to me. And that worked. It worked. Right when after hours started, whoever was needed to get squeezed out got squeezed out. It pulled hard. It pulled harder. It then closed sideways down about 10% in after hours. Again, it closed around like 25. So it was down $2 a share in after hours. And then come the next day, everything's gapping down, right? Did QUBT opened up at like 22. I didn't add any there, but it just got crushed. And I covered up, sub 18, 17, 16. Same thing here with QBTS. I actually got to add this one because this one was going red-green. It actually had a small gap up, but again, it was below the 1050 high, so I added some more there, covered that into the 7 and mid-6s, and then RGTI didn't add as well, but also a small gap down, and then covered that sub 858. So what was, what was this on Wednesday, right? This was like somewhere in here, right? Well, it was a day that I ended up closing small green because of all the other small trades I took. But again, because I took them all overnight, all of the losses from a broker statement standpoint took over with it. So that's how I track. Like until I close the final trade, I don't take it. So really this day, realized P&L was negative over 50 grand, right? But I took it all over the next night and then ended up making all my losses back and then some. I made like 20K on RGTI. I made like 14K on QBTS, another 14K on QUBT. So what, like I said to start off this week, like this should have been and could have been a very ugly week. But because I just finally took a deep breath, stuck to my trade plans on the other two that worked really well, and then had an intuition change. The one time I actually do listen to my intuition, right, on QUBT, it worked out well and allowed me to make all those losses back and then some. So that was really, really awesome. And I'm happy the way it turned out. But again, just you can see how insanely choppy it was. Like again, it could have turned out so much differently. And again, it's not like I just woke up when I normally wake up. Like I woke up at 1 a.m. to make sure these were not squeezing against me pre-market overnight. To just double, triple check I wasn't going to take any bigger risks than I needed to. But yeah, so it worked out. Dodged a bullet. Ended up being green on it all. What's some other trades that also happened though that bring me to this up here? One of them was TNXP, and this is the one trade, or I should say two trades here, that really I think is what I would contribute to really contributing to this bottom line here. This gapped up day was a gift. I mean, it's almost insane to me. Excuse me, how good this got. how big of an opportunity this was. I look back in hindsight and wish I actually did better or was more aggressive. Just how good it was. And I partially was aggressive. I just wish I maybe structured it better. And so what I mean by that is, for those who know TNXP, just one of the more dilutive tickers in the entire market, had this massive parabolic into $2. Now, I will say what screwed me up a little bit is I mistimed this pretty poorly to start off the trade. So if we go into it real quick, where is TNXP? So that's RTTI, get rid of that one. So there's this one. So I started this off on a pretty bad foot. And I wouldn't say pretty bad as in like I was overly sized, but I took a starter, very small starter, super, super wide risk, only to see it actually just continue. I thought I was really timing the top well, like into 150. It went nearly to 2. And I was risking 2 to 250. I was like, let's just see how these round numbers go. Thankfully stopped that at 2, but even if I stopped that at 2, it would have been I don't know, 20K loss. It wasn't nothing crazy. I was going to go in risking probably like 30 or 40K on this trade. It's just unfortunate that because it was going against me so quickly, I was like, I shouldn't add, right? I was being a little bit protective of like, okay, very mistimed starter. Let me not add, and just let that wide risk keep itself there. And until it finds a new risk level, then start adding. And so I say that I don't like that in hindsight because had I just, I don't know, cut it earlier or went smaller of a starter with the idea of, hey, this might still keep going against me, it would have given me much more room to actually add up here, get these good averages that end up being the top, and then watching this collapse. And so once this pulled, I realized my starter was probably too big. So in case if it ever was going to bounce back up here, I was going to do that new plan, which is what I just stated of like, hey, smaller starter at this price levels. If it ever gets back up here, that's where the ads can go for then now, at this point, risk on 2 because now it actually did top at 2. Let's see if we can get a bounce back up here after I downsize. Obviously, into the open, that did not happen. And a bunch of selling volume came in. I knew they are insanely dilutive with I don't know, in my opinion, like a 90% chance that they were going to use that dilution. So I just get short. It's kind of, again, and this is why I say it's silly because had I been a little bit better of structuring this entry, these ads could have been up here, and it would have been a full, 50 to 60, 70 cents higher of an average, and it would have been a much, much bigger win. But nonetheless, I added, it gave you a little small bounce into VWAP stuffed. I then covered a little bit too early here. Unfortunately, luckily that was only a fourth of my size. Covered another fourth here, added that back into $1, and then covered the rest here for a total of, how much did I end up making? Like 46 grand. So pretty solid. Again, a bigger win for me. But again, just what we've already been discussing the last 2 or 3 minutes here, had a little slight difference of adjustments of just a better entry or a better starting in, along with then a better sizing to actually then add. I mean, gosh, this could have been a 6-figure trade. So a bit mistimed on me, but again, it was one of those things where you could still screw up, and the trade being so good or the ideal setup being so good that it still worked out really well. And even then, it got crushed. I mean, it went to 30. It just insane. But I almost positive, and I call it ATM flood because I'm almost positive with 99% chance they 100% turned on that ATM. 99% chance, 100% chance that they turned it on. That making no sense, but. Anyways, that's that one. But a loss that I think got covered up on one of these wins. I think it was either on the TNXP day or on the Quantum day, where I made all the losses back and then some. I did take a loss on MSTR. If we talked about towards the end of towards the end of the November recap video, I just talked about how like, hey guys, I'm not so sure how dead MSTR is. Now, obviously at the end of December, it looks pretty dead, right? It's about 50% off its highs. It's pretty weak. Bitcoin has also pulled back. So this could be the top. This is looking much more likely to top. Not saying it is. Again, there's always a world. I'm going to keep possibilities open to everything, that this could always come back. But again, if it's anything like previous bull cycles, this might be it, right? This is likely to be it. However, when it was basing right here, I thought I liked this base a lot. At the same time, this is when Bitcoin is also basing at like, $95, $100, $105,000. And so when it was happening, I was like, you know what, if there's a world, like if Bitcoin goes 110, 120, 125, in the next few weeks here, like this will have a pull, or not a pull, a big push. And so I did start buying a bit smaller, in the high 300s. Unfortunately, when things looked super bullish on this day, on the 16th, is when I then added. These ads really made the loss bigger than I really wanted. Had I just kept the original starter position, it would have only been like a 10K loser. But these ads, unfortunately, to then have it just get totally stuffed and then stop me out below this 330 low, or 338, it did turn what should have been 10 to 15K loser into like a 35K loser. So a bit unfortunate there. That is the biggest loss on the month. You'll see right here. Yeah, this is just under 35K on any one individual trade. Obviously, I lost more than that across the board on the quantum stocks, but again, they're all divided up individually each. But either way, just a bit unfortunate that I didn't wait for maybe the full confirmation of like this 440 breakout, right, to add. I kind of added in the low 400s. But I lose 35K. I made 600 on the month before. It was worth the attempt, right? Now much lower. Bitcoin's still around 95K-ish or something as I'm making this video, 94K-ish, I think. But MSTR is fading, right? The premium is finally coming out of itself. The bubble, so to speak, is popped. And so it is what it is. No real strong intentions of rebuying. I'm always open to the idea, right? If it holds and let's say 2025 comes around, or it is around, and Bitcoin's making its way to 130, 140, 150, who knows? Maybe there's a world then this makes kind of another move. Again, does it break highs? I have no idea. I could see more of a likely like a double top kind of move, or just another significant high in this range, not necessarily new highs. But we'll see. I have no idea. I got a crystal ball just like everybody else. But it was worth an attempt, took a loss, and so that kind of gave away some gains as well in this week. Okay, so week number 4, Christmas week was not kind either. 3 losses, or 3 red days in a row. I did actually have food poisoning though. I got food poisoning on the night of the 23rd, so I did not trade the 24th. I was in bed all day long. Didn't even sleep all night long. It was brutal. I never wish food poisoning on my worst enemy. It was terrible. I don't ever want it to happen again. But again, on what happened this week, same trend of what is it called? Gap and creps. INTZ was one that just stopped me out brutally. Took like another, I think, 9K loser on whatever day it was. And actually now it's fading pretty well. It was a really good fade. I did not take part in that on Friday, unfortunately. Or on Friday, yesterday. But where is it this day? Yeah, this one was annoying because my stop was like practically at high day, like 240-ish, only for me to get stopped out in after hours, and then the fade comes. That was super annoying. And yeah, here's MSTR of me selling on that pullback. Yeah, INTZ, right? Got short, looked good, didn't look so good, was chopping around, looked okay, and then all second half of the day, I was just like finger on the trigger. I was watching this the entire time, like, do I stop out? Do I stop out? Finally, in after hours, it pops. I stop out, only to see it finally fade. So super, super annoying. Lost another 9K there. So again, another gap and crap loss added to that point. And then I think that's pretty much it that I remember from week 4, if I'm not mistaken. The 30th, though, was interesting. We'll talk about that in a second here. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else I really remember. I don't even remember. On the 27th, this was a bunch of small losses. There was no one big loser, but like I took BBAI long, thinking that the AI and what's it called, quantum sector was heating up. Let's get rid of some tabs. We'll keep TNXP up. BBAI, really quick here. I think I lost like 2,500, 3K-ish. Tried to buy this breakout over 450, only to then get stopped out on the next day on this little red day. I also took Serve overnight. Same idea on the AI, kind of more robotics play, but again, still similar to the AI, like NVIDIA owning them kind of idea. Longed them over this breakout of like 1750. Got stopped the next day, and my gosh, man, as it actually got clobbered in the last 3 days. Holy moly. But yeah, small losses there. But again, you take 3, 4, 5 on the day, and I ended up being down 17K on that day. So it is what it is, no big deal. What happened though on the 30th was, I'm actually shocked. Actually, the only reason why I was green is because TNXP again. So TNXP, this pulled back, got crushed, great. 3 or 4 days later, it offers this insane bounce of a parabolic straight into 70, which was this little resistance. If you look back, right, kind of the first bounce attempt it had into the 70s, got stuffed before it sold off another 30% into the 30s. Perfectly topped right into that level. Almost a perfect double top at like the low 70s. I got short for a swing short idea into this parabolic. It was like a half parabolic short, but then half keeping the rest of my size for a swing. If we actually look at the trade here, we'll go over PDY in a second. TNXP, beautiful parabolic short. Again, starting in very small. This one I like a lot. I learned my lesson from the first TNXP short into 140 into $2 to where, I wasn't oversized. This was very small. This was like less than a fourth size. And so as it was going against me, I said, great, like, please send it to $1. Like, I would love to really get some size up there. But once the tape kind of changed and this kind of blowed off, or just had like this blow off volume here, I thought to myself, and again, into 70s resistance from the bounce, I thought to myself, hey, if 71, 72 is the top, like, that's going to look really good in hindsight after the fact. So in real time, I said, screw it, let's add full size right here, right now. Did that, got a great pull, covered a fourth of my size into the 50s, and then said, hey, this is still as dilutive as ever. Like, let's swing this back down to like the 30s. And that's what I did. So we look at here. The next day was a little bit choppy. Almost broke over the highs. I did have a trigger or a finger on the trigger to stop out. Not all of my size, but again, back down to a conservative kind of starter-ish to see if I could add into the 80s, 90s, $1. Didn't. It stuffed. And then after hours, they announced more dilution. Really, they increased their current dilution. So they had a filing for like 150 million shares or dollars. They increased it, I think, to 200 or 250. So like an extra 100 million, only to see it fade. And then finally, once it started like rebounding a little bit over yesterday's highs or like the morning highs, I did decide to cover at like 35, locked in another 43 grand on that one. So that's what made this day green. But you're like, Kyle, where'd you give the other 20 grand back? I'll tell you. I'll happily tell you. Again, I think another gap and crap stopped me out. But more importantly, PDYN, super, super annoying. I remember being infuriated after this day, mainly because there's nothing I would change about it. It's just one of those days where the price action just happened and it just wasn't in your favor at all. So again, same beautiful 3-day run up, pretty much 4 to 14. Out the open was an incredible sell-off, and I was there with size. Where is it? Right here. Yeah, halted down even, right? Got crushed down to 10. Now, I was very convicted that this was going to see sub 10. Like, I thought between 9 and 10 was a really good spot, being yesterday's kind of support levels. And given the extension, I just thought it was very likely. And that didn't happen. Halted down, opened up in the mid 10s. I did cover a little bit, right? If we look at the trade, let's get our TNXP. And then this is me covering the TNXP on the daily look, right? Just covered it once it was green. So locked in 40-something K there. PDYN. Got short, added onto the red-green move, covered the extra ads and a little bit of small size into 1050. But again, I'm holding 75% rest of my size for sub 10, like just super convicted. Like, I will not cover. I happily will stay short as long as it takes. Like, I was super confident that it would eventually come. And I was also super confident that the highs here in the 13s and 14, the highs were in. That was the top. Obviously it wasn't. I add back some size into here, ends up just zero pullbacks, just straight up, into 14. I cover it. I reshort it thinking I couldn't be the only one who just got squeezed out of nowhere. A little bit of blow off volume. So I said, give me one more shot, only for it to pull, hold view out. Looked like it was going to not break, but curl back to highs. So I covered it there, only to see it kind of just chop around sideways, which in and of itself is just insanely impressive. To see it down almost 10 to 20% of the day, to then seeing up 10 to 20% of the day, like just insane. And this is why I'm frustrated, because I would take this trade and do it exactly how I just did it 11 out of 10 times. There's nothing here that I would have changed. Yes, you could argue, sure, Kyle, cover more at the lows, just in case if it never gets there again, you at least covered more. But like, I don't know. Even if I didn't cover anything, I was still uber confident that these were the highs, right? So the fact that it would just ricochet out of nowhere, straight, the biggest V recovery you could see, straight to highs. Again, I would take this trade 11 out of 10 times, because I think 11 out of 10 times this wouldn't happen. But again, it happens. And maybe it's something I need to adapt to, because we've seen tickers like DUO do it. DUO was down 20% and then halted up being up 20%. We saw DJT. DJT did something where it, did the similar, where it got crushed, only ended up actually breaking highs. It broke highs by like 1% and then failed. So it wasn't nearly as big of this move in terms of over the highs. But like, maybe some of these bounces are just getting a little bit, insanely aggressive. And so it's something to note. Again, those are the only 3 examples I can think of that happened in the last 3 months or so. But again, the other 70 trades that have happened like this hasn't happened, right? So something to keep a note of. I haven't made an adjustment yet because I don't think it's necessary just yet. But it's just frustrating. It's just impressive, really, to get a bounce back like that. So in all, long story short, was up 20 plus K at the lows here, thinking it was going to be a 30K plus winner, sub 10. After all said and done, lost 15K total, realized. So big, frustrating move there to go full 180, or more than full 180, to be up 20 to be down 15. But again, it happens. I would do it all over again, because I just don't think this move is sustainable for 99% of runners out there. So anyways, it is what it is. Ends up actually dying the next day. Didn't reshort it. Oh well. It didn't even go below the lows of this day. So, shoulda, coulda, woulda, covered it all there. But anyways, then we have the 31st. Super happy and grateful that it happened how it happened. Just kind of sweet cherry on top for the last day of the year to just crush it. And the reason why I say that is because PDYN wasn't the only thing. There were more gap and craps that were squeezing. RGTI was also bouncing back. Like the quantum sector was weak out the open, right? Here, right? Gap down after another blow off, only to rip back. Everything was strong. I mean, no short seller, any short seller that overstayed their morning, gave all their gains back and then some. Like, it was just the worst day to be a short seller across the board on almost everything. I could feel the pain, not only in myself, but like just in the community. Like, I could just feel it on social media, in chat rooms. I was like, every short is just getting steamrolled today. And usually when that happens is the sign of eventual shift, where like if shorts are getting crushed, longs are usually having the time of their lives. And if they're having the time of their lives, eventually, it ebbs and flows, it shifts, and there will be kind of a shift where then shorts are having the time of their lives and longs are gonna feel what the shorts felt. And so that is what happened going into the last day of the month and of the year. The top one I was watching was FFIE. Very similar to TNXP in the sense that this is just one of the more dilutive companies in the entire market. I've talked about this ticker plenty of times back in the May recap. Not May recap, me sharing my biggest loss of my career. Not only that, but since then having a lot of solid trades thereafter on this backside move that resulted in a lot of solid wins. I made like 100K plus on this backside move, made another 20 or 30K 2 or 3 times on these moves here, then swung it short from into here, and then got squeezed out, but then reshorted, and then made another, 70, 80K swinging this back to the lows. I think I covered it in November, or not early December. Maybe I did. No, I covered it. Yeah, I talked about it in November. We covered it on this little wick, this pop over 150, thinking it was going to come back. So lo and behold, a month later, it finally actually bounces. The bounce I thought was going to happen here happened here. And so we go from practically 1 to 450 and then 5 pre-market. And at that point, I was like, hey, like this is A+, arguably. It should have been honestly bigger than A+, or I deemed it A+ the way how it turned out, but in the moment I was a little bit smaller size. I could have been even bigger to think about it, depending on how much. Thinking about how much size I had I already had pretty big size, but just the thing about hindsight, when I reflect on how much I was risking, I could have been even bigger, which is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, so out of all the max pain spots of every runner out there, I deemed FFIE to be the highest odds or highest expectancy play, just given this history, given my history with it, given the scenario of dilution, the fundamental scenario, all of it, right? And so that being said, I got short. I get short into $5 on both at my Centerpoint account and my Cobra account. Why $5? It was a round number. It was going pretty parabolic in pre-market. It was just a starter. It could have easily gone higher. But once it pulled back into practically $4 out the open, I thought to myself, wow, it's already $1 off its highs. It would take a lot for it to now spike another $1 back to its highs. Let's see how well it does. Let's just see. And so out the open, this was more my swing trading idea, because I thought even if it goes, let's say it goes back to 5, maybe it goes to 6. Like I put on a very wide swing idea here. Obviously I would have cut a big portion of my size if it got over 5, but I added more at 4, thinking like, hey, let's risk some on 5, and then let's plan to swing this back down like sub 2, back into the 1s. So that was on there. So that's why I didn't really do much with it. It was more of a swing trade. Once I put it on, it was done for. This one was the day trade. That's why you see me scaling out a little bit. You see me adding, you see me downsizing, you see me cutting some on the new highs or new high days. I did cut more even on this high, but in the moment, and those who are watching the tape here, these like 2 or 3 minutes was insanely weak. Like you would think breaking highs of the day, at least of the market open, that this would have really ramped and tried to restart to retest like these high 4s, maybe 5 area. But these next 2 or 3 minutes were just super, super weak. And so that's why you see me immediately reshorting after I cut it. Because I'm like, I don't want to, it wasn't the same scenario as QUBT where I called BS. Because I was still risking levels. I was still then moving my risk down to like some of these previous bounce highs. Once I reshorted it. But reading the tape, I was like, this is weak. Like this is exactly how I think it should look. It just hasn't really started to trend yet. And then, lo and behold, 2 or 3 minutes later, gets crushed. Got to ride through a couple bounces. Ends up going red-green. So that's when you see me covering a little bit there, and then you see me covering the most at red-green. I was all out on this one on the day trade portion for, I think I made like 52K on this one. The day trade or the swing trade, however, I covered like a fifth of my size just to lock some in, because it always feels good to pay myself, especially on a move, and then I was going to hold the rest for a swing. Very similar to TNXP, right? Covered some into the kind of parabolic pullback, and then held the rest for a swing. Now, however, I did not expect this to get as crushed as it did. I thought, okay, it's going to pull red-green. Maybe it goes sub 3 a little bit, but it's going to start chopping around between, say, high 2s and 350 the rest of the day, in this range. And then it was going to take a day or two later, or maybe even a week later, for it to finally really fade. Very similar to this move, right? Right, you had a huge blow-off move. It crapped itself. You give it a week or two, it's back down to where the low started. I thought that was going to be the case with this one, where, give it a day or two, it's going to be back down to the mid-1s, right? Once we're late day and this thing continues to fade and just keeps on going, and now we're in the low 2s, I thought to myself, like, this is way more than I expected. We're already in the low 2s. I said at best I would hold till 150. I'm up $2 plus a share on this particular entry. I had like a 450 average. I was like, it doesn't make sense for me to hold this anymore. Like, as much as I want to swing, I was like, I just got the easiest move I ever ask for. Like, just take it, right? Because if it does bounce, 1, I could reshort, and 2, if it bounces, the risk reward doesn't make sense. I'm going to risk $1 a share or more on a possible bounce for only 60, 70 cents more of downside. Like, I was like, it doesn't make sense risk reward wise for me to keep holding. So that's why I covered. And lo and behold, it actually did end up bouncing. Now it only bounced about 20% or 20 cents, 20, 30 cents off my cover. But either way, I just didn't care. I locked in another 48K there. So 52 and 48. Made over 100K on FFIE alone. I made a bit more money elsewhere. I don't remember specifically where, just because that was by far the biggest one. I made more money on, like, we talked about earlier, OPTT, right? Earlier in the day, back here, just to show you real briefly. Where is it? Made some money, made like 10K or like 9K shorting this. Right, got short. Actually, I missed all of this move, which I'm a bit frustrated. I was too focused on FFIE that I actually didn't even try to short it. In the low 1s, 120s. Did get short a starter at 110, covered it into like 77, reshorted into 1, but then covered it break even because I thought it was going to fade more. It didn't. Also wanted to start fresh on the new year. But yeah, so all in all, really solid end of the month. But again, you'll notice between both 40K wins on TNXP plus the 100K win on FFIE, I mean, that's, you do 40K times 2 plus 100, we're at 180, right? So all of these other trades I went over, all of the quantum stocks, all of the breakout attempts, the gap and craps, they all just canceled each other out. And the two most dilutive tickers that I came across this month, FFIE, TNXP, were the culprits for my success in December. So, yeah, that is what it is. And that's kind of explains why I think the stats don't look as good as I want them to. Risk reward wise look really bad on both the average gain and average loss, but that's because most of my trades were like 1-to-1, if not slightly above it. And it really was only a very small, call it 4 trades, two TNXPs, 2 FFIEs, that resulted in this final ending here. So that's that. Now, the review. Won't go over too much. There's already a long video of the recap by itself. We're pushing an hour. But either way, closing up 2024, just under 2 million, 1.968 thousand. Just awesome. I'm super, super grateful. Super, super satisfied. Super, super content. Right? It was. I think it was, what was that? Me making by the end of September, October, I was like in the 800, 900K range. And I was like, we'll see. Like, because previously in the previous years, like November and December haven't been that great for me. The last 2 years haven't been great for me in terms of actually trying to get something going. Now every year is different, but I just didn't have any expectations, right? I was like, hey, I'm going to have to pull together like another 200K in profits. Like, I'm not saying it will happen, but let's hope it does. Boy, did that change, right? Obviously MSTR that we talked about last recap, immediately put me over $1 million. But then to have a really great ending to December put me now at a very solid, healthy 6-figure month to then bring me just below 2 million. All-time best year is 2021 with just over 2 million. Same percent return actually, so that's pretty good to see. But yeah, just super, super grateful. Again, in terms of the comparison of biggest losses to biggest losers, and again, this is what makes me a little bit actually think this is my new best year, even though P&L wise it's call it 50-60 grand below 2021. It's because 2021 I didn't have any massive losers. Yes, I had a 90K loser on RNM and FFF, but like everything else, I kept it pretty within the range of what I was willing to lose that year. And again, it also was an insanely bubble year. Like the first 3 months of that year, I was almost up $1 million, right? So was the first 3 months, and the next 9 months was still good, but it wasn't nearly as great. Versus this year, which almost the same year, but I took a $400,000 loss on FFIE, and I recovered. Again, looking at like the actual P&L chart, like this is my entire career, but this is just 2024. This dip, this hard pull, right, is FFIE, right? And we are, over $1 million since then, that pull. Obviously this huge push is MSTR, but like, imagine had I not had this, right? Now, I'm not saying I shouldn't have. I'm very glad I did. I learned a lot of lessons and I'm a much better trader for it. But like, not only would I have dodged that big of a loser, but I always told myself, and when I reflected on the trade, I think I went over it in that video when I recapped it, like, had I not lost that much, I also would have made a ton on the backside. Like, I would have made even more than I did because I wouldn't have been so exhausted, I wouldn't have been so risk adverse, etc. And I actually would have nailed the backside move versus not. So all in all, like, that being said, I almost feel better about this year than 2021 in terms of just like being able to actually have recovered from such a big hit. Because besides that hit, right, my biggest losers are under the 50K range, which is kind of what I like. Now, granted, my max stop is higher than 50K at this point. It's more like 75 for my broker max stop. But in terms of how much I'm willing to risk 50K, we've stuck to it very well. I'm actually very, very happy about that. And then on the flip side, all of my winners are becoming 6 figures, where like now 6-figure gains are, they weren't necessarily uncommon. Like, it's not my first rodeo having 6-figure gains, but like now it's becoming a commonality where like any one given year I could have multiple 6-figure gains. And when you do that, that's when you start getting into, oh crap, like multiple 7-figure years is like not out of the question. And And so that's kind of what I would love to set as a standard for 2025. Like, I would love to, again, knock on wood, given 2025s and in like 2024, hopefully this will repeat itself, if not do a little better. So we'll see. Now, I don't, because I feel like I had another point. I don't. But yeah. But you also notice, and shout out to Lance Breinstein. He already talked about some of these in his video. But like, and he's talked about this in previous videos with just like the trend of traders is like, it's usually a very small group of tickers that really result in the end of the year. And if you notice that, MSTR for me, DXYZ for me, FFIE, right? That's pretty a good portion. Now we have TNXP. I made 80K this month. That's a good portion, but again, that's only a little bit over 5%. MSTR is a good probably like 40%. DXYZ, not only in this day, but again, we talked about it briefly earlier in the year. It's right there. Well, anyway, we already got it up. DXYZ is probably a 10 or 20% to my year because, yes, I made 120 here. Yes, I lost 50 of it back here, but I made probably another 1 to 150 between 3 or 4 trades on this back in April, right? So, like, it's really only, when you look back on it, yes, there's plenty of other wallet patterns. There's plenty of small trades that add up. Like Gap and Craps, I'm up like 300K on the year from Gap and Craps. So that certainly was a big contributor. Obviously, that wasn't any one big gain. But when you look at the actual big gains that resulted in, when you add them all up, 50, 60, 70% of your year, for me, MSTR, DXYZ, FFIE, maybe some TNXP, right? So yeah, that's the trend. I have a vision. It will be something similar to 2025. As for what tickers those will be, who knows? Only time will tell. And yeah, thanks so much, guys. We're now over an hour. My throat's getting sore. But anyways, thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys had a great 2024. I wish you guys all the best in 2025. And we'll keep these rolling. We'll see you guys at the end of January, and we'll see how 2025 kicks off. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.